Before we get started today, I want to give a quick shout out to our headline sponsor, Stute Technologies. Every week on this show, I talk to operators who are crushing it on the service side, but still chasing down payments. That cash flow gap is brutal when you're trying to scale your business. That's why I wanted to tell you about Stute. Stute is the AI platform that does accounts receivable work instead of just assisting with it. Their CEO, Tarek, actually came from TQL, so he gets how logistics companies operate. I've known him for years, and I truly trust what he's building. What Stute does is simple. Their AI actually collects your receivables for you, not some software that just helps you chase the payments. It literally does the work. It's up and running in days, not months. As an example, Bishop Lifting is using Stute for a 35% reduction in overdue invoices, millions more in working capital, and a reduction of manual work by 50%. If you're tired of your AR eating up time and cash, check out Stute.ai. That's STUUT.ai. Tell them you heard about it on the Freight Pod. They'll get you collecting in days, not months, so you can focus on actually running your business. Now let's get this episode started.
So you gotta stop me for a minute. I think that's okay. No, but it's actually, I'm kind of glad because I've been wanting, I'm looking forward to this because I think you got like a brokerage background. I was exposed to brokerage in the 90s and I kind of went out and built, that was so I'll go into my background, but I was exposed to brokerage and then started just building the asset side. So I'm looking forward to this from that perspective because you have a totally different view. And I watched the podcast and it's like, I love it and I hate it, right? But it's cool because I learned and hopefully vice versa. That's what that's what I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's at least third, maybe fourth trucking executive I've had. And I do really look forward to these conversations because even if I ask you the same questions that I asked Harmon from Chima, or Giltner, like any of these, like there's so many ways to skin the cat, right? And the way you do business is very different than the way Giltner does and Chima does and anybody else. And the same thing's true of brokerage, even though, sometimes feels like we're all the same on the brokerage side. Everybody's kind of got their own spin on why they do what they do. And so it's interesting to hear the story. That's why we're here, right?
Mm-hmm. I agree. No,
so with
fun.
that,
it's an interesting industry. Everybody kind of bulks everything up into one, but I would argue it's very fragmented, very unique to each organization.
Yeah, well, I think that's the way our brains are wired, is to simplify things as much as possible so that we can better understand them. I remember I didn't learn much in college, but I do remember in one class they were talking about how, like, when you see someone for the first time, your brain automatically makes like hundreds of assumptions about them that you don't even realize you're making. And it's just the way that our brains like consume the world. Like there's too much to take in. So our brain, I guess, fills it in for us with assumptions about people. And I think that's like, it would be too hard to think about brokerage and trucking if we actually thought every trucking company and every broker were uniquely different and offered a very unique set of services. It'd be too hard to like comprehend what everybody does versus saying, the brokers are the middlemen who do XYZ and the carriers they've got the trucks and they charge XYZ on these prices. But it is true. And especially your business, Chris, is as far as I know, and we're going to learn more, it's a little more complex than the typical over-the-road trucking company.
Unfortunately, right? Yes.
Did you say fortunately or unfortunately?
Unfortunately. My mic going? Yeah, definitely. No, I would agree. That's probably our biggest hurdle. That's, what I have to admit, that's managing that complexity is very difficult. And that's what we struggle with every day. It's crazy. And somehow, I don't know, I rationalize it. I don't know why or how. But no,
because it works.
Sure, we'll go with that. No, you know what it does. I have fun doing it. Probably not that much fun in the last 4 years, but I enjoy the pain, I suppose, from an asset side, and that's the difference. But back to your thing about kind of the way we see people. I would argue. I would not argue, but I would say, yeah, it's context, right? We come in with our own filters, and that's honestly what I like when I watch your podcast. Is like because you dive into the filter side of of hey, I have my views because of the way I came up in the world, and you have yours because of the way you came up in the world, and that's the beauty. Because if everyone just agrees with everyone, you just have
boring monotony.
Yeah.
Everything's the same.
So that's the fun part. That's what I enjoy, and it's it's educational, right? Yeah. Anyways, okay.
I'm glad that we started this conversation the way we did, because the reason that I initially reached out to you is because I follow you, I think, on Twitter, and
I'm sorry.
That's yeah, right. I'm not good at Twitter. I mean, I've made a fool of myself a few times on Twitter, but I follow you on Twitter, and you're an opinionated individual. You've got and not in a bad way. And you've got perspective. You've got thoughts that you're happy to share with the world. And I remember reading them and thinking this would be a fun guy to just sit and talk to. And given that I have this pseudo job where I sit and talk to people, I feel like I should do it with him about his life, his business. And, I typically start the show the same way every time. I say, welcome back to another episode of the Freight Pod. I'm joined today by a special guest. And, it's funny, you mentioned before we started recording, you mentioned you just started messing around with Claude. And I did the same. My brother did the same. I got a phone call from an agent that Claude created, I guess, that just, and this wasn't the best executed phone call because I didn't answer the first time. It called 5 straight times. And even after I answered one of them, it called me back and tried to do the same thing. But in the point of this was the agent that my brother had created on Claude had digested a bunch of episodes of the Freight Pod and was just calling to give me feedback on it. So I answer the phone and this robot starts just like, hey, Andrew, just want to give you some feedback on your podcast. For one, stop using filler words. I counted that 6 out of every 1,000 words you use is an and that's not good. And frankly, if I'm being honest, I thought 6 out of 1,000 is a good number. I didn't think it was that much. But the other thing it said was, you introduce every episode by saying, we've got a special guest. And if you say every guest is special, then none of them are special. And I thought that was funny because I knew that was happening. What other way am I going to introduce someone? Everyone's special. But I say all of that long-winded nonsense to say that I do think this will be a somewhat different kind of conversation, a little bit more back and forth, where I just want to get to know you and like your perspectives on the industry. And so I do think this episode will be a little special. And to start, I didn't introduce the episode the way I normally do. So I am joined by Chris, whose last name I won't even attempt to guess. Like, how do we say your last name?
Ceausu.
Ceausu.
Ceausu. Yeah, it's
Ceausu.
Okay. Don't worry, my kids can't even say it, so you're fine.
I could see that. So where are you from, Chris?
Romania.
Okay, Wonderful. And you are the CEO of White Arrow.
Yep.
All right. So let's start with an easy one. I know your business. What do you got?
No,
your point.
One thing you said, Claude. I'm messing around with OpenClaw. That other crap. It's a whole.
Yep.
It's
okay.
wild.
I botched that.
But it's fine. Sorry. Let's get on to the thing I wanted to. You got to moderate. But
I appreciate you correcting. We could start there. What are you doing in OpenClaw?
Let's not. This is not a tech thing. Let's talk about trucks. Yeah, it's actually wild. I'm doing so. Since Sunday, I've been learning a lot. We'll leave it at that from a technical perspective, which is really cool because like we have developers and all this stuff, but I'm always not, I'm second, whatever. I don't know much, whatever. I just understand system architecture and stuff like that. And I just started messing around with this thing, and I'm like, it's wild. Like today, just look at my feed. I pulled data from our system. I set up an API, pulled in data from our call dial pad, which is like a whatever, and aggregated, and was able to get different feeds from it. Like, hey, what's going on with like the top things in the things? How many calls? What's the biggest issues? Da da da. It's pretty crazy. Just aggregating data for my daily briefing, right? That's the basic stuff. But I think going on to other stuff and building apps is kind of wild, just vibe coding. But it's a wild hobby I have. I don't golf. I play around with this stuff. My wife's like, "Why are you doing this all night?" I'm like, "Babe, I just pretend I'm golfing."
Yeah, I think she's thinking about it incorrectly if she's questioning that, because I appreciate that you have the fortitude and wherewithal to do that. Because for me, and this was a question I was going to ask, does technology come easy to you?
You know, I mean, I grew up in the 90s, right? I remember my dad, I had to argue with my dad and beg him to buy me a computer, right? Go to Costco, buy a computer. And I really had fun with it back in those days, in a DOS prompt type environment. So I was kind of exposed to that, but I like it. And that's probably, again, it's kind of my background and, built business around that kind of stuff. So is it, you know what? It's like, not really, but I think what I would argue is I think in life I've learned to teach myself stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So from that perspective, I would say, yeah, I can it's kind of fun learning stuff. And that's actually what I've been doing the last 3 days, but it's like, I'm just going 20, I'm up till God knows what time. It's super dumb. I need to stop.
No, I don't think it's dumb. I think it's one of the smartest, most effective uses of your time. And my perspective on this is, for one, I'm someone who technology does not come easy to. I'm the furthest thing from a techie, whatever, however you want to say it. And it creates a little bit of fear for me long term, because it feels like this is clearly the direction society is going in with respect to every industry, that this is the focus. And I guess what I think is interesting is, I'm curious if you feel like it's your responsibility. You're the CEO of your company, and your company will be impacted by the advancement of AI. And the question is just like, will you be one of the companies that's like at the forefront and leveraging it to be the best possible trucking company you can be? Or will you be a laggard who's behind because you don't trust it, or you don't want to change?
We're so past trusting it.
You don't have a choice, right?
Yeah, we're so past trusting it. It's like Google. Google knows everything about me, right? I think it's funny because I'm fortunate enough to be in a CEO peer group, and over the last 7 years, or maybe even 8 years, I've learned a lot from these guys. Some of the guys are really tech background guys. Orange County, people don't realize there's a lot of tech here. One of the guys was one of the original guys that built WebEx, right, and ran that thing. And I've learned so much from him. But again, what I would say, like, so I think a year, 2 years ago, we're talking about AI. I was like, what the hell is that? But what I would say is, look, we're going to move very quickly over the next couple of years, and months, weeks, months, and years, from a technology perspective. But we're in the early stage. So to say is, are we going to be leader? It's like, it's completely like there was 100 Facebooks before there was one. It's complete. Who knows where the hell how things are going to land? It's a complete wild card. So who knows? It's like, maybe you are. Maybe you just don't realize. Like, you know what I mean? And that's the problem with technology. And you look, that's what America kind of. It's like we're still the Wild West. You look at America versus Europe. Europe is like, everything is like in a box. Hey, don't try autopilot until it's like, whatever on the Teslas or whatever. In America, it's like, okay, you just put your autopilot and drive into a wall. So we are the Wild West, and that's the spirit, which is beautiful and amazing, but it's also super whatever. You don't know what's going to land, but it's great because it advances things.
Yeah, it's a great point, because Yeah, that spirit breeds innovation. I mean, it creates such an it's such a massive sandbox that we're all playing in, that you could try whatever you want. And I guess that's what I think is really interesting, because today I'm not in a position where I'm making decisions around technology that make or break my business. I'm not writing 6-figure, 7-figure checks to software companies or AI companies to give me the new voice bot or to automate XYZ. But you are in that seat, and you make a great point that it's like what looks great today might look archaic in 6 months. And so I'm curious from your perspective, there are plenty of, I think, CEOs and decision makers who listen to this show that are sitting in your seat, who run trucking companies. There are plenty who run brokers, and there are plenty of shippers trying to decide who among these providers should they work with. How do you think about making a decision around a technology partner in this environment when you do think that things could change on a dime, that you might be committing to a contract or a service with a provider that 6 months or a year from now, that service might be like 5 times better by someone else? Like, how do you think about evaluating in that environment?
So we used to use an off-the-shelf TMS up until, in one form or another, we had to reiterate, and then basically we're like, just threw it away and built our own stuff. We take the approach of build your own, just because, and that's not, again, a trucking company should be, and a broker should be able to go out and pick up an off-the-shelf application and then just morph it to their business, and it works. Unfortunately I think our thing, it's unique because of our business flows and whatever. We build the core, and then like we started a brokerage, I don't know, a year and a half, no, sorry, 2021, 2022. And we took our core system. Yeah. We took our core system, built a dispatch board, and then we're not going to build a carrier workflow. We just went out and used Parade, right? Just integrate Parade, because I don't want our guys to sit there and spend it, but it's built as a plug and play. So I can use Parade today. I can use whatever the hell tomorrow from that carrier procurement side. So it's all own the core and then plug and play everything else. When you're building stuff, integrating, you always want to make sure that it can be unplugged from your whatever, right? So, hey, use green screens today, use somebody else tomorrow, use DAT, use this, use that. It don't matter. That's kind of the way I look at it. It's like own the core. That said, it's very expensive, or at least it was very expensive. I think that's changing very quickly. But that's because of our unique business. A trucker tends to do stuff as a trucker. And yes, there's unique things within that, but 90% of the stuff is going to fit in the box. For us, I would probably say 40% fit into an off-the-shelf TMS system. If that, it was probably 20%. So we were forced to build. I think it's dumb to be in tech.
So before I dig in on that comment, will you give a 30,000-foot view of what White Arrow does? Like just high level about your business, tractors, trailers, employees, and like what's unique about how you move freight?
Yeah. So I would say 3 different divisions: asset, truckload. So we have facilities. So let's start with the top line: asset, truckload, refrigerated primarily. Less than truckload and consolidation, that kind of falls onto that thing. So think large retail consolidation, and then the freight brokerage. We started the freight brokerage small a few years ago. That's no fun. That side of it. Now let's talk about the asset side. Terminals on the West Coast: LA, Stockton, Portland, Chicago, Secaucus, New Jersey, Springfield, Massachusetts, and those are all cross-dock facilities with our own employees on site and all that stuff. So we run across country. We've got local trucks, our own, and then we outsource to kind of drayman. We run a container fleet, right? That we own reefers and some dry vans and some trailers. That about 650 units that run cross country on the rail, and then we basically make the deliveries. We contract with the shipper door to door. A lot of brokers use us in that volume LTL world. That's a segment of our business. But again, a consolidation for major retailers. We run some of that stuff nationwide, but we stick to the core lanes that we run. Does that kind of go ahead? I hope that.
Yeah, that's great. Holy shit. That is what everyone says when they see Genlog's truck intelligence platform for the first time. Founded by ex-CIA operatives and fueled by 15 million daily images across a nationwide camera network, Genlogs gives you the power of total market capacity while also defending you against fraudulent carriers. Holy shit is what Genlogs customers say again when they see the ROI from covering loads faster with fatter margins. Holy shippers. That's right. Genlogs unveils the locations and lanes for all the shippers in America. In the era of artificial intelligence, nothing beats actual intelligence from verified by video data. See what Genlogs can do for you. Check out a demo at genlogs.io. Again, that is GENLOGS.io. Tell them Andrew sent you, and they'll include their carrier compliance suite for free. And if you haven't already, I interviewed their founder, Ryan Joyce, last year, and it's one of my personal favorite episodes that we've done. Check it out. Now, let's get back to the show. Volume LTL is an interesting place to play. There's not a ton of competition there, right? I mean, relative to truckload brokerage or over-the-road asset, like typical one-way. Like, I feel like that's a pretty niche space.
I don't know. These days, everybody's doing it. It's probably argue that's the case in the 90s. I don't think so anymore, because you've got truckload guys that's picking stuff up in the route, or you've got other guys that's kind of like sticking to that's doing things, especially. But it's niche from a margin perspective because people don't understand their costs, and that's what we're seeing in that space, which is great. That's like, it's great service and low cost with with some of our peers. I don't think they're making any money, so we stick to our margins, right? Because we know our cost, and that's, we have a hard line. Sorry.
Is that the hardest part of managing that type of business? Is really truly understanding your costs end to end?
Yeah, that's the problem with our business as a whole. Because, right? Hey, we should just stick in one lane, simple, easy peasy to train our people and to do all that stuff. But we don't, because we have all this broad services and think temperature control, dry freight, truckload, less than truckload, even in the common carriers. We play in the common carrier space on an LA to Jersey, LA to Chicago, vice versa. We'll go head to head with the common carriers. So it's so broad, so that makes it very difficult to have a shipment level cost, and then to be able to give that to a customer, whether it's in a contractual manner, right? So if you're doing for, I don't know, XYZ, whatever company, or, a broker that goes to our website and pulls a spot rate in real time, because you got to have your cost, then you got to define a definition of the market and provide that to someone that goes on our, on a website or pulls an API or whatever, has an SMC3, tariff in place with us. To get that, it's very difficult, and then to manage those margins, very difficult. Versus a truckload world, it's easy. My cost per mile is X. I'm going to charge X. I got a head haul and a back haul, and then you just start to kind of pull in the pieces.
Yeah, because it seems like with your business, there are so many touch points for a specific order that it's hard to necessarily attribute the cost evenly. If your Springfield facility might have touched something on the truck, your I don't know, NorCal facility might have touched something and something went on the rail. It's like there's just different touch points there that are creating their own cost items for you.
And that's the problem. Allocate that cost to, hey, what's my cost like on the street? What's my rail cost? And you get into the rail cost. What's my cross down cost in Chicago, right? Because we own all those things. We're not outsourcing, like we're doing every piece. It's probably not the most efficient from a cost perspective thing, but you want to, probably goes to my background, to control the cross down in Chicago, to cross it faster, to pick up the shipment, to prioritize the guaranteed service versus the economy service. It gets really, it's too much at times. But it's fun.
How do you manage that in terms of like defining, sorry, it's so broad, but like, let me give you some context to understand how to answer. How do you like manage the overarching strategy? As you sat down with your team and thought, we want to grow in 2026. We need to make more money and we want to grow our business. How do you look at the whole thing and say, these are where we should focus?
We stick to our lane, right? And it's our think of, again, the lanes that we service, we do really well, and we stay away from. We don't go to the southeast, right? We stick to the lanes that we do, so we have density because that's how we're able to increase profitability, right? Density in that world, right? More freight going to San Diego on a truck versus one pallet out of LA. Significant that. Then we have these service levels, guaranteed premium and economy, and we have to have that to compete with the thing. So you have the service levels, but from a growth perspective, we're focusing right now. The spot market side and all that is going to do what it's going to do, right? It has high highs, right? It's almost like truckload world. You have years when you do really well, and you have years when you do really bad. And we've had 4 years of doing really bad. And I've been doing this for a long time. It's very difficult. I know on the brokerage world, the guys see it. We see it on the asset. Although we're asset light, it's no fun. Let's say I haven't had a good time.
Yeah, I mean that's the last you joined. When did you join the business? Around 2000.
My father and I had a partnership until about 97, 98. And then we we had like 15 trucks at that time. And we kind of, I was still managing his trucks because I was a kid, working out of my basement or whatever the equivalency of it. Mm-hmm. And we split up there. So, but I've always ran the business. And then I had to manage, And in 2000, we incorporated and just completely. Well, I've always ran my father's. My father had like a few trucks. He retired like in 2018. He was driving across country until 2018. He retired because he's like, oh my God, this ELD stuff is coming and I can't do this. Boy, was he wrong. But I mean, I think he was like, in his late 70s.
Yeah, it was time.
Yeah.
But, it's been 26 or something years that you've been running White Arrow.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. So you said the last 4 years. Have they definitively been the worst?
Yeah, but in a way, it's because maybe I just understand the business more, right? We went through 08, 09, right? And we weren't as big, but still, ignorance was probably it served me well that time, around there. 2015 was really hard times. Probably one of the worst time I had to lay people off. That was really bad on our side, difficult because the market was going down and a huge component of our cost is rail, and the railroads were increasing prices. That didn't go well for us. That was probably my most difficult thing because I had to lay people off. From a difficulty people perspective, I would say 2015, and it was not a pleasant time. But from a financial, pure, like losing shit tons of money, the last 4 years have been pretty horrific. But we came off of a wonderful time where we printed cash, so we had a lot of money to burn, and we still do to a point. I think we're in a good financial position, but it's like mentally, it's like you can't fathom these numbers. I don't even comprehend. I can't even tell my wife. She would like fucking beat me.
Keep that between us and the audience.
Just us and a few people.
So how do you manage through such a challenging, turbulent time? Like when you think about the last couple of years, when you're deciding, do we cut costs? Do we hold the line? We've got this kind of stash of cash from the early COVID years that were really, fruitful. But I'm just curious, like, how do you think about those big decisions in times like these?
So we did some cap. So we were cash. We were basically, we were debt free around 2022, the beginning of 2022. And we went out and then the substantial CapEx went out and buy equipment, containers and tractors, and just went pretty nuts with the intent, knowing that your cost of goods in our industry is so high that I could cut all my staff and it's like a rounding number, right? It's really is. It's all cost of managing the cost of goods, right? And one decimal of a percentage is $1 million a quarter or whatever, right? Significant. So it's the capex and right servicing the debt. That's the biggest thing. The top line piece is difficult, and the problem with this cycle is that we had margin compressions. In the simplest form I can explain it is, hey, you're billing $2.50 a mile. All of a sudden you got to bill $1.75. You got to. That's the biggest thing. Again, 2 cents of that is your whole staff. Right? It don't matter. Like, it's not relevant. Yeah. It's all about, and this is why I'm involved on this pricing reports directly to me, and that's probably my biggest headache. It's all about, I'll give you an example. In 2024, I thought the market was going to flip, and we held hard on our contractual pricing going into it. Yeah, exactly. Big mistake.
Bye business.
Our top line just burned, right? Because we're servicing that debt, especially since we did a capex, right? It's okay. It's no fun, but it was okay. Then I'm going into 2025. We've got a guy that's running sales now, and is our CRO. Is a little bit smarter than me. He went out and he forced me to decrease pricing to increase volume, which is the right thing to do because you got to move those assets, right? It's asset utilization is the most important thing. So that's the biggest factors that makes a dent. This year, I'm doing exactly what we did in 2024, and we'll see how it plays out. So far, it's been really good, right? We had a lot of, so you've got this period, the last 2 months of the year, and then kind of like January where you have a lot of annual RFPs, and we went hard on our pricing, and a lot of people fired us. A lot of people cut our volume, and some of those people came back within like the 15 days after, their January one shipper came back and basically gave us the freight and says, made some excuse. Probably that's the problem. So how do you manage margins? I think that's the biggest bang for my time, right? Versus making sure that a customer service rep is more productive, inputs 5 loads versus 3 loads a day or a minute, whatever.
So interesting. I mean, because I didn't say anything, but you mentioned pricing reports directly to you. And you just mentioned the best use of your time is basically on pricing. I just haven't heard that before. Makes sense, but I haven't heard that before from a trucking CEO that like they've spends their focus is so much there. How do you think about the strategy around that then? Because I think what you were suggesting when you said I did the same thing in 24, you were either talking about spending a bunch of cash or you were talking about holding your rates.
Increasing and holding pricing.
Okay, so that's what I thought. You were talking about the latter. Yes. That's fine. But we were talking about two things. So when you came into as we get towards the end of last year and these RFPs are coming out and you're going through it with your team, how do you come to the decision that we should hold / increase rates? Like, because there's not a magic 8 ball, and everybody thinks they have the answer. And I think this is one of the things I've found interesting about some of your Twitter posts is around this kind of notion of predicting the future on pricing and stuff like that. I feel like I've seen something before. But
I call it a Ouija board. Just get a Ouija board. I don't know. I've done everything wrong, so I'm the wrong guy to ask. At the end of the day, I screwed up bad in 24. I not only held pricing, but I increased pricing, which was completely the wrong thing to do. Right, we moderated and came down in 2025 because some of our people forced me to, which was the right call in hindsight. This year, I don't know. I'm holding to my. It's a gut call, but look, from a long-term strategic thing, the only thing we're doing is we're minimizing our exposure to truckload, which is very cyclical, and this volume LTL segment, because that goes hand in hand with truckload. So it has high highs. When things are good, it's amazing, and my dead grandmother can run a 500 fleet trucking company and make cash, and and when it's bad, it's bad. So it's preparing for the bad times. honestly, I went out in 2024 and bought a significant capex, and I did the numbers. I'm like, oh, the cycle's going to be a year and a half, whatever. We're going to service this debt, no problem. I don't have to go, pull cash from other places to throw it in the furnace, as I call it, to run the business. And that was a big ass mistake, right? There isn't really, because you don't know. I mean, no one knows, right? Where's the market going to go? And it's like sentiment. Do you know where the stock market's going to go? Nobody knows. It's all sentiment. Fortunately or unfortunately, we've got a lot of capacity in the market right now, right? And I think that's going away. I think it's going to overcorrect, which is not good for anyone. Like too much capacity is getting pushed out. Then you look at the Cass freight index; our freight volumes are like 2009 levels, man. Right? It's crazy if you measure it by Cass's index.
Why don't people talk about that more? I feel like that is what do they call it? The canary in the coal mine that tells you what's really going to happen. Like when freight volumes are that low, everyone's preaching this recovery that's happening this year. Everyone says 2026.
We've been saying that for the last 2-3 years.
I know, and I don't believe it. But it just doesn't make sense to me that all of a sudden there's all this freight. I get if tariffs like really created a push, but it feels like even that would be temporary because it's just about getting the inventory in. So I don't know. I mean, because I think I've seen you talk about maybe used truck sales or things like that. But like, what other data points are you looking at to try to come up with your gut feeling of things are improving or things are staying the same or they're getting worse?
I think it's different signals. Cass freight index is probably one of them. But look, I think we all got blindsided by this massive amount of capacity that came in our industry in the last, 3-4 years. I don't think it's one signal. FTR puts out a lot of data. I look at that. FTR's got a good truck utilization one. That's a really good one. But again, it's just everyone's got a Ouija board. I don't know. You trust whose Ouija board are you going to trust? It's just sentiment. It's gut. At the end of the day, you just measure the market. That's why, honestly, I like Twitter because you get a lot of sentiment from it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, is there something you can do to kind of offset that need to make a bet? Because like, is there, what can you do to leverage or put yourself in a position where you're not so reliant on the Ouija board, as the
minimize exposure to truckload? That's what we're doing. So over the years, we're growing our true less than truckload business. We run a consolidation for a large retail customer nationwide, both dry and refrigerated. So that piece, right, is not, you don't have too many guys you're competing with in that space, and your costs are very low because we have lots of density in that. And continue to kind of grow that common carrier. It's easy to go up against a common carrier and win on efficiencies, right? But it's difficult to go up against an over-the-road guy. Like we've been losing, like it's wacky. We have customers that tell us, run this freight in brokerage from California to New Jersey, run it on brokerage. I don't want it on your assets. While we have containers stacked at our Stockton facility, and we run it on the brokerage, and we make a higher margin on our brokerage than running it on our assets. But then, somebody's got to pay the bills on those. You got to service that debt. That's the biggest thing is, right, minimize the exposure to truckload because it's, man, when it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's bad. But again, now you have to remember that we're in a different, I gotta shut off all my notifications. So we're in a different segment. We play in this long haul east-west. This would be the dumbest advice to some guy that's running from North Carolina to Atlanta or something, or to Florida, right? Completely different markets, but the space or dedicated, you're going from a regional distribution center to a store for a shipper, totally different markets. Like you're going to look at me like I'm an idiot. But when you're playing in this non-regulated, non-specialized market, it's just kind of the, you're up, we're competing with, whoever.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Let's give a quick shout out to our sponsor, CloneOps.ai. Logistics moves fast. There are calls to make, updates to send, documents to track. Your customers are always waiting. CloneOps.ai helps teams stay ahead with a platform that can be white labeled and a marketplace of AI agents built for real logistics operations. Inside the CloneOps marketplace, you'll find agents for tracking, documents, after-hours support, finance workflow, fraud prevention, and more. These agents plug into your workflows and existing systems to handle the repetitive tasks, whether it's making calls, sending emails, replying to texts, gathering info, or writing updates. Your team stays in control with real-time visibility into every interaction. And because the AI is always turned on, operations keeps moving even when your team can't. A standout is Carrier Screening Plus Voice ID, which ties a voice to a DOT number and alerts your team when that same voice appears across different or multiple DOT numbers, helping catch fraudsters before they cause damage. No one else has this. And for companies building a long-term AI strategy, CloneOps.ai gives you the ability to white label, build, own, and control every AI use case across your business. And this team is run by David Bell, founder and leader who I've known for years, a good friend of mine, and someone who, frankly, anything he touches in this industry turns to gold. I trust him with what he's building here. If you're ready for automation that supports your people, visit CloneOps.ai. Now let's get back to the show. That's also, I would argue, the most volatile lane for price in terms of high and low, right? I mean, when it's July 15th and you're shipping from California to New Jersey, you're spending, I don't know, $6,000, $7,000 maybe. And when it's, I don't know, February, you're spending $3,500, $4,000. Yeah. I mean, that difference is substantial. So I'm curious if that at all impacts your day-to-day or how you manage the business. Like, how do you navigate going from, I mean, nearly 2x on a big number?
No, so look, we don't have exposure to that kind of business, right? We're not in the produce market. We're not in the produce. We don't ship produce, although produce guys have been coming to us lately just because of some of our intermodal peers have been parking their assets on purpose. That's why we focus on contractual business and guys that are shipping whatever, right? Something constant, and you try to have a different dialogue. And then the way you manage that is, hey, I'll move that for whatever, $40, $100 a year round, knowing that the exposure is up, there. Mm-hmm. It's really just staying away from that. But yeah, maybe does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, there's even if you're not in produce, there's still some volatility, but I was just curious. I mean, your answer makes sense that you just generally you're not looking to be in the most volatile parts of the market is the answer, I guess, is that's not, you're not trying to win on the volatility.
But you're affected by it.
You're certainly affected by it. You can't run the lanes and not be affected by it.
That customer comes to us and says, run it on your brokerage because it's cheaper and faster. Like, okay.
I mean, that's where there's value in having the brokerage, right? Because
I agree.
Your name and the core of your business gets a phone call, right? Because you're an asset-based carrier that has a facility in California and New Jersey, and you do some of this stuff with the intermodal partners, it makes sense that someone would think, we have produce to ship. Why don't we call these White Arrow guys? They have trucks. They move California. They move New Jersey. They could probably do both. And that's where it's valuable to be able to say, hey, that while that doesn't align with our core business, we have a brokerage that can support this for you. And even if on the brokerage, you're the same as the 40,000 other people doing the same thing, but still it's because people know who you are that you probably get that opportunity.
Yeah, it gets a little bit easier. I agree. I would add one extra caveat to that. I was talking to a friend of mine maybe 6 months ago, and he was telling me, I used to drive a truck. I stopped driving a truck when O.J. Simpson was getting. No, my last trip when I was driving a truck was O.J. Simpson was getting chased around L.A. I was in Tennessee going eastbound to New York driving produce. So what is that? 30 some years ago, when I was driving, right? The produce rates back then. So my friend goes, "Hey, I'm paying these guys $8,400 or something on a produce load from California to New York." This was like 6 months ago. I'm like, I was listening to him like, okay. I'm like, dude, do you realize that was the rate that I was getting 30 years ago? Your truck is, my truck was $92,000 back then, and that was like a top of the line Kenworth. Now that truck is like $200,000. the trailer was $4,200, $42,000, excuse me. That trailer's like 80 grand now. And the fuel was 92 cents in Oklahoma City, right? The costs have more than doubled versus the rates have not. So it's very difficult. Look, our segment, again, specifically our segment, we operate in some of the worst climate, is not pleasant. So the only thing we do is, when you said, hey, we truly don't have very many truckload customers that ship from LA to New Jersey. We just stay completely away from it. We're going to run less than truckload. We're going to run other deals. Like, you got to be able to put those assets in places where you can get. Last couple of years, we've been moving stuff in just Chicago to the Northeast and stuff like that, or Southeast or whatever, truckload business, just to truckload intermodal business, I should say.
Yeah. I mean, has it been easy to repurpose the assets and get away from truckload and into doing more of the LTL consolidation, things like that?
Yes, because it just comes natural to us, right? Our consolidation business just works really well, and we have systems in place to make it work really well. But like this volume LTL that might, a lot of brokers use this on from LA to New York, LA to Chicago. Take LA to Chicago, or vice versa, to Northern California or the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of players in those markets that don't know their costs, and they're going to do it for a lower price and probably provide a better service unless they fail, right? Failure rate might, we're going to be more consistent, but we call it more money. So why would you not ship? So that segment has been pretty beat up. I can't argue with someone that ships on somebody else. That makes sense.
Where do you think the most opportunity exists today in freight?
That's a very loaded question.
I know. I've got my own idea of an answer. I wanted to start broad on purpose. I'm going to narrow if I don't like your answer.
The most opportunity, I think that's unique to the operator. You can argue, Martin's going to do dedicated, and that's their deal, right? And they go sell a dedicated operation. For us, it's going head to head with a common carrier, because we have naturally lower costs in our core lanes, or just building out these like consolidations, one specific one for targets, right? Like legit. So we have so much density in that just our cost is so low that we can do that. But that's just unique. So like, you get, 5 guys in a room, 5 truckers in a room, it's going to be 5 different answers. It's unique to everyone's operation.
So specific to your operation, what about reefer LTL?
Our target consolidation is temp control. That's what
is it really?
Oh yeah. Yeah, both on the food side and on the dry side, protect from freeze. We do a lot of confectionery.
Then to zoom out for a second and just focus on the theme I wanted to get to, which was reefer LTL. How do you view the reefer LTL landscape in the industry in general? Is it one that's well serviced? Is it one that's there's plenty of capacity on? Or is it a golden opportunity for whoever maybe is the best operator to figure out how to kind of scale a reefer LTL solution?
My view on reefer LTL is, for our network, it has to be very selective of the customer base. And what I mean by that is, naturally you're going into these grocery stores, right? And if your cost structure, we run W-2 drivers, right? We operate in California, New Jersey, Massachusetts. Like, they're least regulated.
Places
Oregon,
to do business.
Illinois is the least regulated state that we operate in. Okay, all right. So you start there, and then that's getting really crazy. So when you're paying a W-2 driver by the hour to go sit at Kroger or what's that Mudge something in Mayer, right?
Meyer.
To go sit there 8 hours to deliver 1 pallet of reefer LTL, you got to be a freaking moron. But if you have a structure that you're paying something to make that final mile on some guy that's going to go sit there and just eat it on some owner-operator or not owner-operator, an outside carrier that's going to Mayer with 20 other shipments or something, that makes sense. But we're not structured that way because we need the visibility to that final mile. Remember, we run everything end-to-end our own assets, or we don't call it brokerage on the regional side, but if you ship something from LA to Meyer, what was it? Meyer, whatever, Meyer, right? that final mile from Chicago to Michigan, I think they have a DC or something, I can't remember,
Mm-hmm.
may run on a white arrow truck or it may run on an outside carrier. We don't call that brokerage, but
It's
it
like
is
Dre.
brokerage. It's Trey, exactly. But that driver is going to have like either run our app on it so we have visibility to the location. So we're not going to find some guy that's, I don't know, Bob's Trucking that's delivering all the time into that company. We're just not going to put it on there, even though it might be a lower cost, because we need that visibility, that in and out time, so we can provide it to the customer, which is good and bad, I suppose.
Yeah, because it's me. I mean, I reefer LTL has always fascinated me, but never in a way where I thought I saw a good solution for it. Because you need the scale and the density to really
So
be able to make it work, and you also have to deal with the competing. You have to deal with the challenge of some products you can't put together, right? You know, you have different temperatures and different
bulk
issues that
kits,
could arise,
multi-temp.
and there's just like there's insurance issues and concerns around, like, you know, you were at a Meyer and there were the guy was sitting with his doors open for 4 hours and someone else's product got messed up. Who's at fault for that? So like I get why it's a really challenging problem to try to tackle, but as I think about the people in companies who I've met, it's like your business is as close to one that's almost set up in a way where it could scale to support reefer LTL well.
As long as you're selective with your customer base. Again, 100%. I can't send a W-2 driver and sit there because I wouldn't have a job, right? The problem is, and this is why I think that space is always going to be fragmented. To do it to go run a 50 truck operation and do that and to manage it like, you know, on a shipment level, great. But to do that at scale is virtually impossible. And we try, good or bad, we have a systematic approach to things, right? Everything is a systematic, structured thing. So to create a process around multi-temp and to actually execute that in a day in and day out with, you know, different warehouses and different people and different things, you know, it's psychotic. Very difficult. And one guy forgets to scan a pallet while it's going outbound or something. It's nuts. You have no idea. Right? We have a lot of guardrails in place. Like, this is why we built out, like we owned the whole infrastructure. It's a freaking nightmare though, because you don't want something to go the wrong temperature. You don't want something to go to, you know, consolidation in Chicago gets put on whatever. You put a pallet that's going to LA on a P&W truck and then going to Portland or something.
That's a very really expensive mistake.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We used to do that a lot. And we put a lot of guardrails in place where how do you control a warehouse guy that's loading stuff at 2 a.m. at our cross dock in Chicago to make sure that one pallet, the dude's got to scan it. And if he's not scanning it, that thing's not going to bill out the trailer on the rail. It's going to stop you from billing because there's one pallet of freaking Portland freight on the LA truck or vice versa. So it's stuff like that you got to be like psychotic about. So I would say very difficult to manage at scale would be my answer.
Yeah.
Great opportunity. I think it's amazing. To succeed in that, I don't think it's scalable unless you have. We're trying, and trust me, we do it, but we're sticking to that confectionery space because it's more forgiving.
Yeah.
Right. But we're going into there more and more. But it's select your customer base and just be disciplined. It's difficult, and just last summer, somebody put in. So we specifically, particularly on the spot side, we don't allow any freight under 40 degrees, specifically for that reason, because anything below 40 is a problem. And we had some guys put some freight through our spot stuff. We didn't know it. That was, I think it was meat or something. And it ended up from North Cal to, I can't remember where it was going, Jersey, I think. They said, "Oh yeah, you can run there at 40." It was supposed to be 35, and then we're buying the damn thing. It's very difficult to manage.
That's where I feel like frozen would be easier because it's just got to stay frozen.
You're
versus like messing with the in between numbers.
I agree. You know what's crazy about frozen? We were running some data because we have these reefer containers which we run these slimline units on. So we were doing some analysis on fuel consumption between frozen and like believe it or not, perishable 55 degrees. I'm sorry, not perishable, but protect from freeze around 55, 65 degrees. And that 32, 35. And what we're finding is the fuel consumption at frozen is better than it is at 35 degrees. It's wild. I'm like, how is that even possible? I don't know. That's what the data was telling us. It was crazy.
Interesting.
It's weird. But we do run stop and start. So maybe, I don't know. It's weird. But yes, I would agree with you. But that freight tends to go more into grocery outlets, which we're not really equipped for because of the W-2 situation. So then you got to, we'll call it dray, call it whatever you want to call it. Those guys are running a white or a trailer or container to that delivery, to that final mile to the guy in Michigan. But you still got to compensate that driver for sitting there 8 hours to deliver one pallet.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's a different route where you do it, where you focus on, you want to create a drop and hook scenario, but to do that, you would need to have enough density to not drop one pallet when you show up to the Meijer in Michigan. You would need to have a truckload of pallets. And then
we have a structure in place, but you got to have the density.
Yeah, that's
you
need the density because you can't show up with one pallet to do the drop and hook. I mean, that doesn't work.
We have processes in place to not deliver that one pallet and hold it to increase the volume to go into that receiver. But at what point do you pull the trigger? You're going to have some service level agreement with your customer. So then if that density, if they're not delivering on volume, which whatever, then you're SOL, you still got to deliver it, right? So in theory, in an RFP process, you can examine that historical data from a shipper or a customer, and you can say, yes, in theory, it makes sense or whatever, but then maybe you don't get the full award or something happens. And that's why you got to obsess over your P&L.
This is where the AI should help. I say the AI, but this is where AI should help, because I think the biggest inhibition of creating a solution that actually works here is a lack of shippers working together. And what I mean by that is, like, if you could create a larger pool of freight to put the puzzle pieces together with, I think you could develop the density, right? And so what I mean by that is, like, if you're thinking about Meijer, but you could also parlay that with all of their vendors that manage their own freight into Meijer. So you're not just getting the stuff Meijer manages, you're also getting the stuff that others manage going to Meijer. And you put all that in one sandbox to play with. I think you've got an opportunity. You could take it even further if you could mix Meijer and Kroger and Target and Walmart together.
Let me
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, in theory, that's a really good idea. In reality, I'll give you an example. We had a shipper or customer that had a bunch of freight out of Alabama, right? We were trying to do this consolidation thing, and they give us the historical data, and we said, great, here's the price. We take all the lanes to all the DCs. It was a Target deal. We take all the lanes. Some analysts thought it was a really good idea to split up that volume out of the origin. We're like, you can take it back. We don't need it. We can't handle it because I priced it as I need to run a truckload into Alabama or whatever, I don't remember, Michigan, Mississippi or Alabama or something origin, to be able to truck that up to Chicago to our DC to then spread it into the DC, to the network. You can't give me half the volume. It's all or nothing. And I go back to the decision making of a lot of shippers has been handed to an analyst, which is good in a way, but it's also bad in a way. You go back 20 years ago, you had some dude that was making the decisions. It was like great, and you could have that conversation with them. But now it's some analyst, analyzing some data set on freaking some BI tool that's like, this makes sense this way, which is completely nuts.
Well, I think that's where the how matters. It's like it's a good or it's bad that they give it to an analyst. It just depends, how do they analyze it? Because if they analyze it on what's best for this specific lane by itself as its own independent situation, then yes, giving it to carrier X might make sense. But if you think of the hundreds, if not thousands of iterations, And some of these potential outcomes are based on pooling it all together. And that might lower the overall cost per lane by 3 cents if you pool it. If they're analyzing it like that, then it can make sense. But the point that you're making is that's not how it's done more times than not.
That's sales dialogue, right? And reaching the year of the decision maker to say, give it all or nothing is nuts, right? We just had a customer come to us, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, a week or two ago, significant award. And because actually our sales leader, he's very adamant about dialogue with the customers and all this stuff. They went through the whole spiel or whatever, and then they tender us like, it was like $4 million worth of business. Transcon, freaking over the road. We're like, we don't do that. Like, we don't do this. Like, what are you doing? We're intermodal. You got the wrong guy. Thank you, but so after you're having dialogue, no one's listening. You could talk to I have 20 other examples like that.
Okay, let's take a quick time out and give a shout out to one of our sponsors, Rapido Solutions Group. Rapido connects logistics and supply chain organizations in North America with the best nearshore talent to scale efficiently and deliver superior customer service. Rapido works with businesses from all sides of the logistics industry, which includes brokers, carriers, and logistics software companies. Rapido builds out teams with roles across customer and carrier sales and support, back office administration, and technology services. The team at Rapido knows logistics and people. It's what sets them apart. Rapido is driven by an inside knowledge of how to recruit, hire, and train within the industry and a passion to build better solutions for success. The team is led by CEO Danny Frisco and COO Roberto Icaza, two guys I've worked with from my earliest days in the industry at Coyote. I have a long history with them and I trust them. I've even been a customer of theirs at Molo, and let me tell you, they made our business better. In the current market where everyone's trying to do more with less and save money, solutions like Rapido are a great place to start. To learn more, check them out at gorapido.com. That's gorapido.com. Now, let's get back to the show. Yes, I agree. And that is a point of contention that the conversation you have in the sales effort is very different than the contract you receive on the routing guide. And I get it because they're having the same conversation with 20 or 30 other folks. And it's 3 or 4 or 6 or 12 weeks later that they actually commit the prices and the lanes to the carriers. So they probably don't even remember what they told you.
Exactly.
But it is, I think there's a significant flaw in how shippers procure transportation because you're just rarely getting the best of everyone's abilities. Like it's rare that you're getting so it's rare that White Arrow is getting tendered all the lanes that are the best fit for them and also the best fit for the shipper. It's usually one-sided, and it's not even, I don't even know that I would argue it's the best fit. I think a lot of times it's the lowest paper cost or the most
They
incumbent.
ran it through some benchmarking tool and told them to do that. And that's the crazy part. It's really, look, I don't think the right way is 20 years ago, some dude just making a decision based on the way, I like you or I don't like you, right? I don't think that's the right way. But like, how do you bring all this, the data? I love data. I live and die in data, and that's, but holy shit, you have to be able to, like, our people in pricing, and we have a lot of processes and stuff. And what I find is like, you need the experience because you can have all the data analytical skills that you want. If you don't understand the business to say, I can take that Alabama freight and run it as a truckload because your historical data shows that you're shipping on average 20 pallets at a time, and run it into our DC in Chicago and then, split it from there. Like that's a operational awareness that a data analyst tends never to have. And how do you design a process around that so a data analyst can do? So it's funny. Yeah, one of the things I am like hands-on when it comes to LTL, we have tools and processes in place for pricing truckload, but the LTL kind of, it's back on my plate, and I'm directly handling a lot of the data stuff. I'm trying to design a process, and I'm going to try to do it with some form of, applying. I don't know. I have some ideas. Yes, bringing the data analytical skills and then the business knowledge and aggregating that. I'm not AI is not magic. It's just a tool, but how do you apply those two things together? I'd argue you could probably do it.
Yeah, I agree. It's not magic. I do feel like one of the things AI is good at is connecting dots. And like if you can put the right data in front of it, it can connect dots a lot better than you and I can staring at an RFP spreadsheet for
I agree.
XYZ shipper. Like to me, that's where I think there actually is an opportunity for AI to meaningfully improve the industry is the way that shippers and carriers and brokers all look at RFPs and do it. I don't know the answer yet, but I do know that this kind of siloed, each person looks at it and gives their perspective, and then someone makes a decision looking at it with each carrier's numbers next to it. Like that does not tell, the numbers tell a story. They don't tell a full enough story for effective solutions. And maybe this is why brokers exist, is because that specific thing can't be solved super easily. Is creating that, by that thing I mean like creating an efficient freight network, whether it's for one shipper or aggregating shippers, whoever it is.
I have one word for you: execution. I was reading, I think it was a Wall Street article or something. The large companies are adapting AI, but what they're doing is they're going out and hiring these Deloittes or these consulting companies to do it. That the consulting company, hey, I want AI implemented in my organization, and you go hire Deloitte, you're paying them, they're incentivized to rack up your hourly billing or whatever, right? Their incentive is to bill as much as they can because you can argue whatever, one thing or another. Execution is the key. And this is why I think the technology piece has to be owned by the individual businesses. And look, even though I'm fortunate enough to have a dev team, very good, whatever, but they're going to get pissed if they're watching this. They're very good, but and I probably have a lot more resources than a lot of people because I have to. It's a core competence for us just because of the business complexity. It's very difficult to execute from the crap I'm thinking in my head to the actual reality, or the operational flows of how do you make sure that you have a notification when a reefer container ingates into the rail ramp and it's got the fuel levels are too low, and there should be a notification, and they should stop they should be calling the railroad to not move that unit or something, right? How do you build that complexity into an operational workflow and times that by 1,000? Good luck. And then you've got to pay some consultant or some dev, tech team or whatever. Execution. So maybe AI, I don't know, OpenClaw is my answer. It's actually kind of, since Sunday, I'm learning to code. I tilted up 3 APIs already. I don't know shit about coding, and they work.
I mean, I think that's, I read, there was that guy, Matt Schumer, and I don't even know if his name deserves to be said on a show like this, but I think that was his name. I could be wrong, but he had this post on Twitter that he wrote an article that went super viral. I think when I read it, 80 million people had already read it. And it was kind of like this doomsday, AI is taking 50% of jobs and all this, that was his
subscribe.
And bear in mind, he's an AI CEO. So he's a little, take his opinion with a grain of salt. But I say all that to say, one of the things he suggested was this stuff, AI, it's coming at a rate that, it's advancing at a rate that we have not seen before. And it will only continue to advance, but you should not worry because it's still so early. If you just spend an hour a day messing around with AI tools, within a year, you'll be further along than 99% of the world. And so I think there's something to be said about even with zero coding experience like you and I have, just getting into the tools, messing around with them, learning about them, even as hard as it may be for someone like me to learn this stuff, it's worth our time because it's going to be embedded in the day-to-day of our life, and it's better to understand it and know how to apply it than it is to be scared of it and sitting on the sideline.
Oh yeah, you're dead. You're dead.
Completely unaware.
That said, I don't think there's it's like the internet in the early 90s. You don't know, in 2025, you're going to have some app on your phone, whatever. No one in their wildest dreams imagined that mobile would be a thing, right, in the 90s. It's the same thing. The only thing is, and this comes from smart guys in my peer group that run actual SaaS companies, this is not going to be a 30-year thing. This is going to be a 5-year thing. In 5 years, the world is changing in a major way, probably sooner. Look, last 3 days of my life, literally, I've been up since, like last night, I went to bed at 2 a.m. I went and got the stupid Mac Mini and installed this OpenClaw on the I don't know, just it's all hypey and shit on the. Oops, this I don't know if I can cuss. Sorry, on the
You
internet.
already have, so you're good.
It's complete or whatever. Right. But looking at it, the crap I was able to do in the last couple of days is wild. Like my wife's like, "Why are you? What are you doing? Why are you up? Why are you not sleeping?" I have been like, it's insane. I'm baffled by it, and in a way, I'm kind of like subscribing, drinking the Kool-Aid right now. But and I'm at a point where I'm building ingestion points, right? But remember, we have a tech stack, so I know the architecture, I know all this stuff, so I'm building. Hey, take a simple example, right? Ingest your VoIP data, right? Your phone, right? Your cloud-based phone system data, and plug it into some data storage warehouse, and then have AI analyze and aggregate that. I've been ingesting all these points, and this morning, literally, I did that, and actually I put a tweet out. It's wild the shit I was getting. I'm like, this is nuts. But that's an ingestion. So these things are really good for analyzing data. But like, okay, great, cool, wonderful. All right. It's a cool Google search, Google search of 2026, right? It's Google of 2026. How do you build apps around that? So I'm like, okay, I'm toying around right now, and our tech guys, I've been asking him questions because but again, security. This OpenClaw thing is a nightmare. Do not install it if you don't comprehend what you're doing. Do not mess with it. Make sure that thing's locked down. It's nuts. And
you just mean in your business and giving it sensitive information. You're just specific to that.
It already has your specific information. The security things, I'm not even going to get into it. It's like you're playing with the loaded. I think Elon Musk put out a thing. You're giving a monkey a machine gun. That's what you're doing. That's probably the best description of it, right?
That's
I would
fair.
argue you're giving 20 marquis, AK-47s fully loaded. But you're able to, like, more or less. So one point I'm doing right now is I have all these ingestion points. I'm basically, we use Google Chat for like an internal support team. You build a bot with the internal knowledge base, and you basically support for internal, IT support and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm playing around with it. It's pretty wild. It's pretty nuts. Because you build, right? We as the business owners build the what's the right term for technical specs and operational specs for an application. Well, shit, you feed these things that, and the damn thing builds it. You go from, I'm thinking about this, to execution in 3 hours. Deployment 2 hours later. It's wild.
Yeah.
But
so
again,
it looks like, based on your tweet from today, it's largely been an effective data aggregator and an analyst for you. It's a data analyst. It's you're pumping your stuff into it, and it's spitting back out. Here are the numbers you got for your call activity today, and billing disputes, documentation gaps. That's what you've used it for thus far.
Yeah, to a point. But I'm ingesting data. I think it's building apps. It's going to be pretty interesting. You're already looking. I don't remember what I put. I've moved on.
Yeah, that's fair. So I guess when you just said it, from, I think one of your, you didn't say YPO, but whatever, your CEO peer group that you're in, one of the guys said, this is a 5-year thing where the world's going to meaningfully change. Let's assume that is true.
Mm-hmm.
As a CEO of a company that is like so rooted in like the physical economy of like physical movement of goods, equipment, hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment costs, how do you think about a 5-year horizon for like your strategy, your focus, knowing that you have this idea in your head that 5 years from now, the world looks very different? Like, how do you strategically approach that kind of uncertainty?
That's a good question. It's probably the best question. It's worth just coming on for this question.
Hope you have a good answer.
No. Good luck. No, look. I would say, how do we simplify our people's work? How do we get our people not to press numbers on a keyboard or stare at a screen, and actually get them to actually move things forward rather than just sitting there and doing repetitive tasks that are mindless, right? Data entry, as an example, is the worst damn thing. Like, how do you streamline that? How do you get your people, instead of doing data entry, even EDI and all these other tools, how do you simplify those processes and let them, I don't care, watch YouTube for half the day and have double the production, right? How do you get them to, and it's a people mindset. And that's what I struggle with. I don't struggle with our people. That's what I try to teach them. Like, please move things forward. But that requires a different type of an employee class of employees. So that's how I look at it, right? You're simplifying. I think these tools are going to simplify our lives. It's going to make, I hate dispatching trucks. How do you simplify? Like, you look at one of our dispatchers calling guys, texting guys, hey, you got your work, you got your stuff for tomorrow, you know what you're doing, and then following up on them. It's all repetitive stuff that does not need to be done. 80% of the work for everybody. How do you get them to focus on decreasing costs, making things more efficient, moving things forward? I think that's the key, but it requires a different set, like a mindset. Dispatchers, for the longest time, we'd hire dispatchers, like experienced truck dispatchers. Those guys, none of them would last more than 3 months with us, because they're like, oh my God, I can't do stuff the way I want to do stuff. Because to us, it's like everything is a process at our organization, right? It's a process. You're moving loads on a board, or you're doing whatever. It's all very like process oriented. So we have to hire people from outside the industry that are like, okay, this is what we do, I guess. But it's also double-edged sword, because these people, like, they don't go elsewhere because they're like, oh my God, this is crazy. I don't want to go dispatch trucks in this manner. This is nuts. So they end up like just sticking, So it's a different mindset of employee. Does that answer your question, or maybe dive in?
Yeah, I mean, it answers part of it. It answers part of it. I mean, you're acknowledging that. I think maybe you said it, maybe you didn't, but essentially what you're saying is some of the roles in your business, I don't think they'll exist in a few years to be done by the people doing them today. And you're essentially saying that means that it's your responsibility to elevate these individuals and like elevate their skill set, or find others that can like move the ball more, like make a bigger impact outside of kind of the check-ins and the moving of the mouse from one side to the other type deal. So like, I think that's important. And this is one of the things that I thought was a really interesting take about this whole, the world's changing in 5 years, is it is way easier for the human mind to look at what currently exists and see how that will negatively impacted by change than it is to look at what does not yet exist and see how that will positively grow and be created by change. So what I mean by that is it's way easier to look at your business and say, if AI advances over the next 5 years at the rate we think, these dispatch roles will not be needed to be done the way they're done today. That's like looking at that, this job won't be like, it'll be done by AI. it's harder to say once AI is capable of doing all these things, what can we build next? Like, what can we create? What can White Arrow do next? Because that takes a lot more creativity. So that's the hard part of the question that I don't have an answer to, and I didn't hear it in yours because it's hard. Is like, we don't know what the technology necessarily looks like yet. We know we have a general idea, but we don't know exactly how it's going to play out. Therefore, we don't know what the next opportunity will be for White Arrow or for my next freight brokerage, whatever it may be. You get what I'm saying?
Yes. And that's where it's our job and our we have to teach our people to move things forward. I think that's the key, right? How do you get out of that repetitive task stuff? And that's very difficult because people, myself included, like I have my routine. And when you step out of your routine, you're like, oh my God, this is nuts.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting, but it's coming. Oh, what I would add to that is great. It's kind of like the RFP thing that you were saying earlier. This sounds really cool. Good luck. I want to see implementation. I don't think we can implement. And maybe I'm going to pound my chest and say we're the best, but we're not. Right? It's nice to have an idea. It's a totally different thing to execute on that idea. And that's very difficult. Who's going to execute? And
Yeah.
I think we're going to get in the way as humans. Like on paper, this stuff sounds really cool. In reality, I don't think it's going to happen. Execution. How do you do that? How do you take our industry that's so fragmented, right? Not, you put 5 guys in a room, they do 5 different things. Well, I don't care if they're doing LA local business, right? I don't know what the right answer is.
Yeah, getting everybody to march to the beat of the same drum is really hard. And especially when you're talking about like the companies that have the most to gain from some of these kind of efficiency measures are the largest ones because they have the most data, they have the most freight. If you were talking about some kind of consolidation process or shippers working together, anything like that, basically to create scale across the freight networks by bringing more providers or shippers, whatever, together. The biggest challenge is typically going to be all the red tape and bureaucracy that you just run into at these big companies. Like, it might seem like a great idea on paper, but then when you want to execute it, and now you've got to ask XYZ Fortune 100 retailer to agree and actually move the ball forward. It's like, how many issues are you going to run into before you can even get through the contract, right? Like, I think that's one of the reasons why our industry is so resilient, is the fragmentation from the onset. It just creates opportunity for people because the industry is almost forever inhibited by fragmentation. Like, you can only become so efficient as an industry when you're as fragmented as the industry is. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think just generally
I think you're
makes
completely
sense.
right. And even, you look at the technology side, I think it was one of the CEOs of one of these SaaS companies in our TMS system said it, these TMS systems are an exception management systems. Yeah, it all depends on how much exceptions you stick into them. So it's all exception management. It's all exception management. And then you got to manage the chaos. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think it's fun. I think we're living in amazing days. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, but it's also going to be, I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think the last thing I would add to that too is the exception is the rule. So like, yeah, they're exception management systems, but like exception, it's not like we're talking about exception management where the exceptions are happening 1% of the time. The exceptions happen robustly and in a way that, like, if you don't deal with them effectively, that's why you don't exist in business anymore. Like, it's such a crucial part of this business. It's all people care about. You're only as good as your last load.
Yeah, it's true. Exactly. Yeah, you get so many times you get fired for one mistake.
Doesn't matter if you do
all the
100 things
automation,
right.
you can wipe your butt with it.
Yeah, wipe it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't. It's tough. It's going to be interesting. It's look. It's definitely interesting. I think it's a tool. I think look, it's going to do a lot of things. Whether it's we're going to see a lot of changes. Some people are going to be more ready than others, and sometimes you know what, doing it, picking up the phone and doing it manually probably is the most efficient way in some cases. I don't know.
Yeah, put that on your next investor deck for some AI business. Doing it manually is the best way.
People.
That'll get you a fat Series A.
I don't know. Some of these guys, I mean, in the tech side of our industry, it's I'm not, you know what, I'm going to be quiet.
Careful. Yeah.
Don't get me started.
Yeah.
No, at the end of the day, look, we're just, we move freight, man. Let's just be realistic. We all are in this thing to just get the freight the most cost effective manner from point A to point B. And how we do that, it's very, everyone's going to do it their own way.
With AI. Moving forward.
Yeah. We have some robots just run across the country with a pallet of freight.
It's coming.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. Yeah, yeah. Okay, this is becoming an AI show. Let's move on.
Yeah, we're done. No, we're done. We're an hour 20 in
to AI.
I don't know if we accomplished what we set out to do today. I don't remember what we talked about much. I'm going to find out when I run through it again. I think you did great. But I do think we got to call it here, and I'll probably have you come back sometime and we could talk about things that aren't AI related.
Oh, well, yeah, let's do that. No, it's definitely going to be interesting. And I don't know. It's fun.
I think you'll make a great panel guest. I think I should have you come on a panel with 3 or 4 other folks and we can start debating stuff. I feel like you'd have a lot of kind of hot takes and opinions.
I was hoping to discuss assets versus brokerage. That was the main thing. I was hoping to learn how to build a great brokerage from you.
Yeah, you can call me later and I can give you some perspective there. But I
was going to tell you on trucking.
This is part of my problem is I don't set a full conversational schedule. So, I like to just talk about whatever we talk about. And I enjoyed the conversation, even though we didn't do a whole broker versus asset thing.
Yeah, that was my main. I think that's what we should have been said. That's what I was in this for, not this whole AI BS.
Well, this is what you got. So,
an AI show.
To our listeners, next time we will talk broker versus AI, broker versus carrier, broker versus AI, the next UFC match. All right. We sound like an idiot. We're to everyone who's listening still, if you are, thank you. And we'll see you next week.